Hello, I'm Catherine Brown Ramsperger, author of the award-winning The Shores of Our Souls. I'm also an intuitive coach who founded Ground One. Welcome to Storytime. I'm so excited today to introduce someone you know well who makes these connections real every single day here at Storytime, and someone whom I've just met, who probably does too, Kendon Jung, Kailey's mentor. So Kendon believes in being a catalyst for re-imaging the world, helping to transform today's community into a more sustainable one. He graduated from Arizona State University with a bachelor's in sustainable urban dynamics and a master's in higher and post-secondary education. He's now pursuing a PhD to uncover how he can design environments to empower and accelerate sustainable lifestyles. Kendon has been a leader in research on desert water policy, global corporate social impact, and urban resilience. And he's worked with academia, business, and nonprofits to help them achieve sustainability. Currently, he serves as the City of Tempe's Sustainability Commission Chair, helping them create a long-term vision. He's also the program manager of the Zero Waste Department at ASU. Welcome, Kendon. And now the leader of today's conversation, our own Kailey Mullis. Driven to help the world meet the needs of today without impeding the needs of tomorrow, Kailey seeks to empower others in becoming more informed, involved, and active in our rapidly changing world. She combines her passion for empowering others, policy analysis, and sustainable governance systems in all her work. Kailey graduated from ASU 2 with a bachelor's in sustainability and is pursuing her master's degree in public policy at the same university starting next fall. She served as a student leader in sustainability and social change advocacy at ASU and served as a policy intern for both local and national organizations, including mine. Welcome, Kailey. Welcome to both of you. And now I turn over the reins to you.
Yes, thank you for such a wonderful introduction, Kathy, for Kendon and myself. I'm really excited to be doing this because not only are these two people I consider big inspirations of mine, I am excited to talk a little bit about why the dynamics of a mentor and mentee relationship can positively benefit any relationship you have in your life, no matter whether you have a mentor or a coach or anything like that. It's really to say that we can all learn from each other. So I'm really excited to talk about my dynamic with Kendon, as it has been a mentor and mentee relationship, and also he's become a friend of mine. And we'll also be getting into the topic of sustainability a little bit and what that really means and what it entails. And we'll hear some of Kendon's wisdom about that. So I'm really excited. So thank you, Kendon, again, for being here and for talking with us today. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about our relationship that we had and how it formed. So our relationship, I feel, it could have strictly been a supervisor/employee relationship, but to me, you became a lifelong mentor, even if we don't work together again, and we haven't worked together within the last year. So what do you think made our dynamic so positive?
Well, thank you both for having me here. I'm very excited to talk about this. And in the space of the positive dynamic that I think was so important was that you were my first employee that I had ever overseen. I was in a new role, creating something new. And because of that, I think that environment or that circumstance really led itself to be explorative. And as a result, trying to teach every single moment or to treat every single moment in this very adaptive space as an opportunity to learn, grow, and do something new well is at least how I entered into all of the relationships that I was developing. And I didn't tell you this at the time, but I had never had an employee before. So I was like, we're just going to wing it. But that mindset to me is entering into a space where you are trying to learn as much as you possibly can to treat every opportunity to grow from that. And as a result, and my circumstances being unique, but the takeaway of treating every moment like a learning opportunity, I think, is incredibly powerful with creating positive dynamics and relationships with others.
Yeah, I agree. And is this sort of mindset that you had one of the bigger reasons why you hired me for this sustainability position, which, by the way, for everybody watching, Kendon hired me to be the sustainability chair of an organization at ASU, a student organization at ASU called Changemaker Central. And it's basically a student-led organization focused on facilitating and helping students find their place within social change initiatives on campus and beyond. And this was my first leadership position of college. I had done a few things in high school, but nothing sustainability related, because I didn't even know I wanted to be in sustainability until my junior year of college. So Kendon hired me into this position fresh out of journalism school. So I didn't really know much about sustainability yet. So I'm wondering, this mindset of cultivating growth out of new experiences and approaching every experience for change. I'm wondering if that's why you hired me, knowing that I didn't have any sustainability experience.
Yes, and that's definitely a large part of it. The way that you responded to questions, of being inquiry driven, of flat out saying, I don't know, but I will find out, or I will try this, or I will do what I need to be successful, which I think is very different, because that shows a growth mindset versus just tell me what you want and I will do it. That in those two examples, there's like one that's like, I am being directed and I will do whatever it takes, versus I have a natural curiosity and an appreciation for learning. And that was a large reason why you stood out. The second part, which brings in your journalism background and the fact that you did not have a background in sustainability as much as others, from my perspective, especially in the changemaker space, is our work was focused on engaging people outside of the green bubble. And so you got into sustainability through your own pathway, and being relatively, new to that, you had a more salient experience that would translate well to connecting others who share a similar kind of status with their sustainability relationship, if you will. And besides the fact you were just charismatic and ready to like jump on anything that we were going to try, I was like, she's my gal.
Thank you. And I feel like once I got in, I did see the importance of bringing in a fresh new mindset into a sphere where it can often be an echo chamber. So being here now, where in this interview, I feel that obviously we know what sustainability is, and we both majored in it. And so I feel it's important to talk about what sustainability is. So could you define sustainability for those watching, please?
Absolutely. So the classic definition of sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without impeding the needs of the future. That is a very limited definition in my perspective, because it doesn't define how far in the future you are looking to, as well as it is predisposed to be human-centric as opposed to world-centric. And quite honestly, if our environment is not healthy and thriving, we depend on it to thrive as well. And so there's an interconnected relationship between the environment, society, and the economy, in which all can benefit from it. And I personally do not believe, and this is a business term, that sustainability, or the way to achieve sustainability, is a zero-sum game where only one group can win over another, right? And sustainability is finding that beautiful balance that improves everyone's outcomes and not just one person. So I know that's a lot to digest, but think of, for those that are watching, what are the ramifications of what you're doing, and can those things be tweaked, adjusted, redefined, recirculated, whatever those things might be, so that your waste becomes someone else's resource, or your byproduct becomes someone else's treasure, whatever those things are, to promote this positive relationship between all the stakeholders.
Right. I like to think of sustainability almost as like a philosophy of life.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can approach anything with. And I remember when I would talk to students often about sustainability and what it can mean for them, I would try to meet them. We would always talk about meeting people where they're at and showing them how what they do or what they're passionate about relates to sustainability, because I think oftentimes we get caught up in the idea that sustainability might just be about recycling. And it's important to realize that it's about, I think, just making things better for everybody, to simplify it completely. So thank you for defining that. And to kind of take it back into the mentor-mentee relationship questions, I just wanted to provide context about sustainability, so we're not just talking about it in broad terms for everybody. So this question I'm asking is kind of about how you helped me learn lessons in leadership. So when you knew if I was kind of going in the wrong direction or route for a project, how did you handle it and help me develop?
Absolutely. So this is a classic student development theory that, quite honestly, I think using the word student development is limiting. It's really just people development and helping folks see what might be missing. In those scenarios, even though I sometimes had a good idea of where we needed to go and the tactics we needed to take, me telling you, no, that's wrong, doesn't help anyone. So in those moments, what I try to do is kind of pose questions that help process the steps or the logic or whatever it is that helps, or that I use to get to that end outcome. And in having those conversations with you and saying, all right, like, are we meeting people where they're at? Do they actually know what we're talking about? Is this the best route to go? How do we like think bigger? All of those elements activate, this idea of like inquiry. Okay, how would I actually go through this? Let's talk through this step by step. But I think the part that's really important about that is also, as a mentor or a supervisor or a boss or whatever those things are, that you are also not rigid to the outcome. Because I learned things from you or I learned things from you and the committee all the time. And I never pretended to be the expert of all things, because I'd get in trouble and it definitely would eat my words, which I have no problem being humble, but rather like the group environment relies on trust, and how everyone coming to the table with an equal responsibility and passion to achieve positive outcomes. Those types of questions help you as a team process those. I might have been in the game a little bit longer, but I'm still going to learn things as well as pass on knowledge to you. And so that was something that, as I brought into, steering you all in a particular route, that having those discussions, as conversation points, and being open to alternative paths, I think is a good way to kind of flash out when things are going wrong, but not necessarily being hyper-focused or narrow-minded on what the end outcome is.
Right. And I think it also speaks to who you are as not only a mentor, but as a person, because you genuinely wanted me to grow. And if you were to just tell me what was wrong, I wouldn't have grown from the experience of doing a project in a certain way that I knew we could do better for the next one. And that's why we ultimately were successful later on in that year with the projects we had to come. So I really appreciate that. And thank you for that answer. So I think we could do one more question before we break for audience questions. So I am wondering, other than what you just said, what are some things, or what is one thing you learned being a mentor that you use in your everyday life outside of work?
That's a really great question. And this was also passed on to me from my mentors. And it's that as a mentor, your objective is not to benefit yourself. Your objective is to help whoever it is that you're mentoring grow into the things that they are wanting to grow into. And as a result, that takes a lot of active listening to really say, hey, like, what is this person trying to do? And then reading in between the lines and looking for, okay, if this is where they want to go, I have my sum of experiences that help inform the way that I would respond. But there's some reading in between the lines, and also the hard conversations that come with that. Because as a mentor, you have to be comfortable with saying it how it is, even though the mentee may not like it. But also on the inverse, the mentee needs to be ready for answers that they don't want to hear. And Lord knows I've had way more answers that I did not want to hear from my mentors. And I was just like, oh, okay. All right, well, I guess I'm going to just swallow whatever I was, saying I was going to do and consider this other alternative. But again, goes back to this perspective of being open-minded and receptive to what people are suggesting or saying.
Right. And I feel like this is especially beneficial in any relationship in life, whether that be friendships or, family member relationships. I think it's especially helped me because I used to be the type of person who always just wanted to give people advice, whether they asked for it or not. And I would, I mean, like, I see what's the better path for you. And I also learned that oftentimes what we think is a better path for people is subjective, but most of the time, well, not most of the time, I don't know what I was even about to say, but I've definitely learned from the experience of being a mentee in that it's better to kind of, if you feel a certain way about something that somebody is doing or a route they're about to take, asking them those critical questions to help them kind of think through what they're doing and then support them no matter what, and hope that you help them make the right decision. So thank you for that. So Kathy, do we have any questions from the Facebook audience?
We do. Noel Puglisi is asking, so sustainability isn't just about the environment. And I have a feeling she's asking that, so you'll tell us more. And I have a follow-up question to that.
Absolutely. So I think, yes, sustainability is not just about the environment, but it is definitely about the environment and the relationship in which we exist. And so I say this because in many spaces that I've been in, there has been this perspective that the human and built environment is separate from the natural environment. And they say it in those ways, the human environment and the natural environment. But like the way in which we build, in terms of like efficient buildings, as well as where we build, and the end outcome of our processes, our businesses, all rely on the environment. And so it is that relationship in which sustainability sits. Now, it's a very nuanced space, and as you learn more about sustainability and look at those types of relationships, you, as audiences and members of the world, will develop your own understanding of that relationship. And I would encourage you to do that, because it's a lot of fun, in my opinion. It almost goes back to, if you all remember from the environmental sciences classes way back in the day, the web of life, right? And you've got this massive web in which humanity is only one of many other species, to put it lightly, and yet we are disproportionately and at scale altering our environment unlike any other species on the planet. I'm not going to go into whether humanity is separate than animals, but there is an effect that our activities are having. And again, looking at that relationship and how we, having a higher IQ than any other species on the planet, have a responsibility to maintain.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great answer. So, Kendon, I'm hoping, well, first of all, I just want to say what a great explanation of what mentorship is. And my question is going to be about sustainability, but I believe in mentorship from the bottom of my heart, and maybe if you and even Kailey can provide ways people can mentor other people later. It doesn't need to be now. We'll put them in the comments section, because I think people need to know how they can do it other than hiring somebody, right? But about sustainability, and as a follow-up to Noelle's question, so I thought I was sustainable. I mean, I thought I was a sustainable global citizen. And I found that sometimes what I thought was benefiting the earth might not have been, and actually even might be detrimental to the earth. And I think that there is a lot of confusion and mistaken information, misconstrued information to the general public. And I do believe, because I'm that kind of person, that people are good and they want to do good. And I know when I throw something in the recycling bin, and I just want to say, everybody, sustainability is not recycling. It's so much more, but it's a start. And I'm wondering what I could have done to have made a bigger difference if I'd been educated, or a couple of examples of how we can live a sustainable life here on Earth.
I appreciate that question. The mindset and the philosophy that drives how I make decisions and how I look at opportunities is, first, how do I reduce my need for things, or my consumption of things? We have close to 7 billion people on the planet, and at the rate of consumption that we are presently at, we are degrading our resources. So in any way, shape, or form that you can reduce a need for something is your default. So examples of this, my favorite is the single-use disposable plastics and straws. For those that don't have a physical need for straws, and there are folks with different physical disabilities that need a straw, you should, and those people should, but for everyone else, do you actually need a straw, or is this more of a convenience? Same thing with plastic bags. For me, I absolutely despise single-use disposable plastic bags because they are used once and then they go away. So the only thing that I have to retrain myself on is I need to remember to bring my reusable bags to the grocery store. That is a small but powerful change at a scale of 7 billion people, that you can no longer need a single-use disposable plastic bag by replacing it with something else. So reduce your need. The second is when you are picking things that you are going to consume or that you need to consume, that you are doing it, or that you are picking things that either have a high value of recyclability, so things that either will last a long time or can be recycled, is kind of your second process. So I say this because, or an example of this would be in our office, instead of doing particle board for our desks and whatnot, we purchase metal desks. And we know that because metal is significantly easier to recycle than particle board ever will be. And so the way in which you source, pardon?
It lasts longer too,
Exactly.
at least in my experience.
So it lasts longer and it is easier to recycle. And so the materials that you choose, look for these things that will last long, that will be recycled, or that are more recyclable and retain more value. And then the third is, if something is destined to go to the landfill and you've picked it to last as long as it can, and you've rethought about all the different ways that you can reuse it, then making sure that it gets into recycling, a compost, a recovery, a donation, any of those streams that keep material out of the landfill. And if you follow those three guiding kind of perspectives, that will significantly reduce your overall impact across any type of thing, whether it's food, purchasing, transit, you name it. They're really good guiding questions to help inform your decisions.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. I'm going to ask one more question from the audience because this has prompted a couple more, and I'll save Lucille Dorothy. We're coming to you, don't worry. But Tatiana Ramsoff asks, is there one simple way to encourage sustainability awareness in children that resonates with them and will stay with them and encourage them to maintain? What a great question.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it really speaks to my upbringing. I was raised by teachers, one environmental science teacher and one kindergarten teacher. So in that sense, one thing I think is important to remember is in especially like K-5 students, when they latch on to an idea, they really hold the adults accountable for it. And my mother in her kindergarten class has time and time again talked about how the kids will chastise the adults when they forget to put something in the wrong bin. And that comes from just having the students interact with the material. And they do a lot of activities on, for example, arts and crafts. Instead of going out and buying rhinestones and processed feathers from Michael's, they just pull whatever's in the recycling bin out, and the creativity of the students take over. And since they, in that activity, we're talked about like, how do we reuse waste? That is indoctrinated into the way that they view the world. Same thing with their learning garden, which is, or it's called the learning patch. So they go out and they take food scraps from their dining hall or their cafeteria, put it into a composter, and then they are taking that and using it into their gardens that are growing things, and then they're getting to eat those. So those little activities go a long way into the malleability and the sponge-like characteristics that these kids have at that age. But I would be remiss if I did not mention a connection to nature. So gardens are a fantastic urban solution to getting involved with nature. But as we live in spaces that become more and more urbanized, the actual untethered or untamed wild, which should remain wild, is a connection that we should all strive to have some form of relationship with. And I'm not telling you to like go completely off grid and get in some, mobile home and just disappear into the woods, but like what do hikes look like? How can you plan even glamping, right? Going out and glamping in the woods just so you can have some connection to these spaces and not be completely separated. That will go a long way for how you set your mindsets, how youth will interact with the world, and how that interaction will change their consumption patterns.
Wow. I hope we get back to that. That's how my childhood was. Thank you so much. And back to Kailey.
All right, cool. So staying on topic of sustainability, and talking about how we can get more into sustainability or what that really means, we found in our work that we often hit a wall with getting people involved or interested in sustainability just through awareness and education campaigns, which are still productive things, but to really get people interested, we had a hard time. So this is kind of true for almost anything, any sort of campaign. So how can we close the gaps between awareness and action and behavior change?
Absolutely. And I do want to give you some credit. Even though we had a hard time, we were dealing with a population, i.e. college students, where there are so many different attentions that are being drawn on them. And so you are competing with all of those things for something that should be innate with how we interact with the world. So don't sell yourself short. It's a hard game. With that said, closing the gaps between awareness and action that produces sustainable behaviors is, and you mentioned this earlier, is meeting people where they're at. And one of the exercises that we went through with the Sustainability Committee at the onset of the year was talking about our own journeys into sustainability, because each one of those has an entry point. For me, that my entry point into sustainability was when I was in elementary school. I biked to school, and that's because my parents had to go to work. They couldn't drop me off. They were also teachers, so they didn't have a whole lot of extra time or vehicles to drive us around. So it was like, you're getting to class by biking or you're going to be late, and then you're going to be in trouble. So that that's starting me down the path of, all right, I'm biking to class. And at that time, I didn't really know what was in store, but I was biking to class. Through high school, it was then, all right, like, I don't have a car. I probably jumping on other people's carpools in order to get to class or elsewhere. And then once I got to university, it was about not having to pay for parking on campus, not having to get through all of the traffic in order to get to campus. But it made me hyper aware of the excess heat that I was biking through and the amount of pollution that was literally coming out of cars at my face. That then led me into urban design, which talked about urban sprawl and the increase in commuting distances. So this progression is something that compounds on top of each other. And starting from building or getting people more aware is leveraging all sorts of different things that pique interest. So one of the things that our team in the Zero Waste department is really trying to focus on is in a current pandemic and post-pandemic world, that people are like chomping at the bit for a social connection, and they are looking for escapes that help them de-stress. So the way that we've really tried to change our tactics is making social media trending content. Like right now, we're really like laying into the artists, specifically Rihanna, so that we can play off of our campaign, which is reduce, reuse, recycle Rihanna. And that kind of gets into the pop culture space and bringing humor with sustainability. And that combination is creating an outlet for someone to be like, Oh, whoa, this is really funny. I'm going to unplug from my Zoom classes, from my work remotely, from I'm seeing the same four walls into a little bit of an escape. That's going to, and humor is a great way, but there are other spaces that you can apply tactics that will reach people where they're at. I don't want to, I can provide additional tactics in follow-up resources though.
Okay, that would be great actually. And in that answer and kind of revisiting this question, because I haven't really talked about these things in a long time, I think getting people into sustainability is also having them critically think about the world around them, because the way you were describing your journey into sustainability, while we didn't have the same lead of events, it involved the same sort of thing where we're critically thinking about the structures and the, how the world works essentially. I got into sustainability just in taking a humanities course, and we were talking about the socioeconomic impacts of having a front lawn. Like, I always just thought having grass in my front yard was, a pretty thing, and it was fun because, you can go run around on it, blah, blah, blah. But I never thought about how, how much water a front lawn required, or how front lawns can also be a sign of social status or economic status. And I just never thought of it like that. And so again, I like to think of sustainability as really just understanding the world around us beyond its function and how we can change that function for better and for everybody and for the environment, because we're all one living big organism.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the only other thing I would add on to this is it feels like a lot of my peers use tactic or unintentionally suggest that the only way to close the gap in sustainability awareness is to go to the extreme. And people have to develop their own sustainability identity. And going 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds, while is a really nice Tesla model, is not, for the Honda Civic drivers and for the people that are actually on scooters or longboards. And so in that, taking an appreciation for where you are and where you have come, and using communication tactics or programs or initiatives that help meet you where you're at and take these steps. Now, I will be completely honest, our world needs to transform rapidly in order to avoid a lot of our pending environmental stuff, but that's all doom and gloom. As long as folks are taking their own baby steps and continuing those baby steps, we will be in a lot better place. And that's where I feel this gap in awareness and producing behavior change is so important.
Right. And I think it's easy too for people that do become interested in being more environmentally conscious or into sustainability. It can be easy to condemn people who aren't, especially people that might not believe in something like climate change. And I had that problem myself in college. A lot of the time I felt like we're talking about meeting people where they're at and trying to get people more involved in sustainability or just caring about it or hearing about it. And before we could even do that, we were off condemning people like the climate change deniers and whoever else. And those are the people that we need to be having more conversations with, more open, productive conversations with, where we might not necessarily be trying to convince people to get into it, but just to understand their perspective, one, so we can understand better how to curate our messages and meet them where they're at. I think that they're often left out of the conversation completely. And that always sat wrong with me, I think, as well. So that's just something I thought of when you were talking about that question that I wanted to include. So, Kathy, I figure we're already almost 20 minutes till our end time here. So do we have any other questions? And do you want to ask your second question?
Well, thank you. And so do I agree with that. It means we need to open conversations all over and stop pointing fingers. It's so important to have the conversation. So Lucille Dorothy, I need a little bit more perhaps, but I'm going to ask the question as you put it, and then we might need to follow up. Do you think social barriers are an obstacle? And then she says, an example, food at weddings, more than anyone can eat, it is tossed, wealthy wedding. So after that example, I was wondering if she meant social occasions or whether she meant society sets it up so we have conventions that we spend more and more and more, and then our lawn has to be as green as our neighbors and things. I'm wondering if it's the broad stroke or the microcosm, but I think you could answer both, frankly. So
Yeah, that's a great question, and keeping up with the Joneses, in a lack of better words, is definitely an element that contributes to overconsumption. Now, in that particular example of the more food than you could ever eat at a wedding example, to me, what is the purpose of having more food than you can ever eat other than a perspective of the event? Now, quite honestly, and I might be, in my own opinions here, but the wedding is, when I get married, the wedding is for me. It is not really for other people. And so you can bet that I'm not going to have a smorgasbord all over the place, but it's really because of my intention to reduce my own footprint. And as long as people are, moderately fed and in having a good time, that is what matters to me. But you're right. Having more food than is available is a power move. Having green grass is a power move. Having a super sustainable building, even though it is sustainable, is a power move. And if you are doing it with the intention of others, then you're, in my opinion, doing it for the wrong reasons. You should be doing it for you. You should be doing what you think is right and what you think is right with relationship to your relationship with sustainability. And it's going to be a fine line. Nothing is perfect, but a whole lot of little perfect or a whole lot of little things amasses to a massive positive thing. So there is also a lot of research in social psychology and the things that drive human behavior, and comparing against others is a huge part of it. So I'm not sure how else to answer that other than I guess your own, like, this is how I'm gonna roll, and whatever other people think, teach their own.
Right.
I think it's great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. I was just going to say, I think it's just a matter of what we prioritize and value. And a lot of the time we don't even second guess those decisions just because it's so ingrained in how we've always thought of things, especially large events. So I think it's just a matter of what you want to prioritize and how you can make those changes in those once in a lifetime events or big events that don't happen very often, and then in your everyday activities. So,
and I also think, like, with the events space, if you need to have more food than is available to make sure that your community is fed or your audience is fed, have a plan for the leftovers, right? And if it goes to waste, then there is a failure. If it doesn't go to waste and you're donating it to a local food shelter, you're sending it home with your audience members, and you got your little compostable to-go boxes, like, you are doing your due diligence, and that is in my opinion a win. Even if that is the experience that you want to provide, how do you account for the unintended consequence?
Right.
Great answer. So Lucille Dorothy came in with a clarification, but I think we still touched on it. She said no social positions, and then she said Kailey basically answered it with the grass example. Noelle says, you explained how to encourage young people to get into sustainability, but how do we encourage the older generations who simply feel that sustainability doesn't matter to them because they will be dead anyway? They need to have children. No, I'm kidding. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Just a little joke.
That's a great question, and something that I do struggle with a lot. I think, though, a really great example, maybe more of a like meta example, if you will, of a sustainable relationship is Social Security. The people who are currently working now are paying for the Social Security that the older population depends on. If we were not working, there would be no Social Security to support the older generation. So in that vein, sustainability matters because you are still here. And there are other people that depend on how you treat their environment that will be here for much longer, or for significantly longer. And it is that mutual respect for humanity that I believe is what brings us all to the same place. And that is, look out for your neighbors, look out for your environment, and how do we help in all the ways that we are doing things where we are to lessen negative impacts and strengthen positive ones.
Fantastic answer. So I think that's it. I turn it over to Kailey, and I thank you so much, Kendon, and you too, Kailey. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody asking those wonderful questions. Thank you. So I figured these have been awesome topics, including sustainability, but I thought that, one, I just want to know this selfishly for myself, but also to kind of tie in the conversation about mentors and mentee relationships and your career. So I was wondering, what was the most pivotal moment in your career, Kendon?
Probably the two, well, I'll break it down to two, and I'll make them quick because I know that we're coming to an end. One, the first one that was really pivotal for me was in my career was recognizing that there is no predefined path to where you will end up. And that if you have a rigid perspective of where you will end up, you will constantly be met with oppositions, challenges, and things that will erode your own confidence. It also, in that vein, does not embody the pursuit of being open-minded. So everyone's journey is kind of like a ship zigzagging from port to port and not a straight line. The second is, so that was really pivotal for me to think about what are all of the opportunities available. The second was, again, in this idea of seeking mentorship. Now, I was very lucky that after not being successful in getting hired into a sustainability job 3 years after I graduated, that when I was seeking my mentors, so I was like, I literally have no idea how to like move forward. I'm having all of this like professional anxiety, sustainability anxiety, that the world's not getting any better unless I do something. Having these anxieties, that I sought out two people. One was Lauren Kuby, who is a council member for the city of Tempe, a community manager for the Global Institute of Sustainability. And I was like, how do I gain experience and in this space that won't hire me? And she's like, join a board and commission. And I was like, I mean, it's pro bono work, but like, you're absolutely right. I'm, pouring lattes over at Starbucks over here, but I can still donate my time and energy to public boards and commissions or nonprofits. So that was pivotal to change the way that I saw gaining experience. And then the second mentor that I got is the Senior Vice President for Educational Outreach and Student Services at ASU, Dr. James Rund. And in that space, I was asking him his perspectives on sustainability and student leadership. And this was part of my master's program of just like, I need to have a better understanding in this space, blah, blah, blah. And after probably about 6-ish months of just chatting his ear off, he was like, hey, do you want to try this out at ASU? I can't promise you a big salary, but like, why don't you try it out? And I was like, yes, please. So in that, those mentors really seeking out or helping advise me on the things that I hadn't seen before, or giving me an opportunity that, yes, I feel very privileged for that, but it was also like, you need to put your money where your mouth is and start creating something from scratch. So those were pivotal moments of expanding what I thought was experience to be much more inclusive and open-minded, and to really hear what my mentors were saying to me and acting on it.
Yeah, as somebody who's also trying to find a post-grad job in both the sustainability field and public policy field, that was good to hear, because often I get that anxiety that I'm not finding a job right after I graduated. The sustainability field is robust and it's growing and there's so many opportunities. And I'm like, why am I not getting anything? I put in applications time and time again, nearly every week, 1 or 2. And it's a nice reminder that while I might have to work another job, to make an income, that I can still get involved in my community and still find that pathway in. So thank you for that. That helped me personally. And that is why, well, initially, the question that I asked that question selfishly just because I wanted to hear what your most pivotal moment was, but now it's selfish because it helped me personally. So thank you. Thank you. I think that I have one more question we could ask. Kathy, I want your opinion. Do you think we should close out, or do you think I could ask one more question?
Well, it's been such a stimulating educational conversation. I think you can ask one more question. I'd like to show my tea bag before we leave. So I'm going to do that. Then you ask your question and we'll be right at the hour. So I always do. It's randomly drawn. And I will read it. It's Yogi Tea. Compassion is the fountain of forgiveness. And when I saw that, I thought it's about Mother Earth. It's about having compassion for everything. So thank you. I think that's what we've talked about today. And Kailey, please go ahead and ask your final question.
Yeah. So my final question then is, what advice can you give to people that think they don't have any passions or goals in life, but want to develop some?
That's a great question. And I think that at the root of it, it boils down to finding purpose. And purpose exists in so many different places. It exists in the workplace. It exists in your family life. It exists everywhere. And being able to hear when you are in those experiences, or even put yourself into circumstances that you normally wouldn't find yourself in, and then just listening, like, how do you feel when you're in this space? How do others feel when you are in this space? Now, to be quite honest, I never thought I would find myself in sustainability, nor did I think I would find myself in a university setting. Now, as I went along my my education, sustainability stood out as a clear marker of where I wanted to go, because of this idea of improving the world and leaving it better than how I found it. And I was like, that is a job that literally is the definition. But then within that, and as I was going about that, I was like, oh, I'm going to work for I don't know, Walt Disney and make their parks super sustainable and like all of these things. I'm a huge Disney fan. And through that and trying to pursue that work, I was looking at it and talking to different folks that were working in corporate industry. And at that time, I was like, oh, like who wants to do reports? Who wants to like do data crunching? Like, no, that's awful. I really enjoy talking with people and working with people. So when I got my first part-time job working as a education coordinator for Valley Permaculture Alliance, I got so much joy out of creating a learning experience and watching people have aha moments. So that was even though I was never going to work there full time, right? Or even long term, that being in that space and listening to how I felt doing that type of work was incredibly impactful for then deciding what I wanted to do next. That's what led me into working in student affairs and getting that opportunity from Dr. Rund. And through that, like working with you and working with the Student Sustainability Committee got so much joy because I could help you all navigate your own experiences and create projects, programs, and initiatives that affected others. So I was then, projecting, for lack of better words, my own sum of experiences onto you all for you to help others. And that was incredibly rewarding. With that said, and the last piece I'll add into that is your passion doesn't have to be a lifelong passion. It just has to be a passion. It can be as long or short as you want, as long as you get good things out of it that help you feel satisfied, that help you feel fulfilled, and that help you see what your next steps are. They can be hobbies, they can be professional, they can be anything. So as long as you are listening to how you feel in that moment, how you grow from that sum of experiences that move you on to the next space. I know this is a bit meta and like, how do you find those things? But be open-minded, put yourself into spaces that you wouldn't normally be in, and then listen to how you react and how you feel in those spaces, and your passion will show itself to you.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to end the answer to that question. And one thing I just want to add, because I know we're about to run out of time. I was in that position, starting college as a journalism student. I felt like I didn't have a passion. And a lot of the time we equate passion to career too. Like we should have, your passion should be your career. And for me, I think that's why it was so hard for me to figure out what I did consider my passion, because I was tying it to like a monetary, like social value. So what helped me find what I was passionate about, whether you consider it something that you pursue as a job or not, was asking myself, and Kendon's gonna remember this, is asking the question, what are you mad about? It's almost like a different spin on finding what you're passionate about, because getting involved with social change, at least, I think a great thing to get more people involved is to ask, what are we mad about? Like what systems and things about our lives and our everyday lives are we angry about? And what can we do to be involved in that change? And I think that can manifest in so many different ways. And it ended up becoming why I wanted to pursue sustainability and public policy as a career in the first place. And you don't have to pursue anything for a career to be a passion. Like I keep saying, like, I just think that it's really just, it is like you were saying about it's really about entering spaces and listening and kind of really figuring out how you not only relate to it, but how it just resonates in you and in helping you find your purpose and how that then reflects in your life. So thank you, Kendon. And thank you, Kathy, and thank you for everybody for listening and asking these wonderful questions. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Kathy, for giving this opportunity for me to interview one of my favorite people. So I really appreciate it.
It's my honor because you guys are our future, and it's wonderful to hear a conversation like this. It does my heart good, and I know it will anybody that listens. So thank you both. Looking forward to our story hour chat next Thursday with author Valerie Taylor, who wrote a novel that's getting a lot of attention called What's Not Said. It is a laugh riot, and she is probably quite funny herself. She has been in our emails. And you can join me and Kailey here every second Thursday on this Facebook page, interviewing fascinating people like Kendon, who bring the world together and make it a more enriching place. And all of these are archived on Facebook and YouTube, so check them out. Looking forward to seeing you all next Thursday. Until then, this is Kathy Ramsperger bidding you a good weekend with a great book to read, and no straws allowed. That's a joke. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye, everyone.